Very good morning and warm welcome to everyone this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate you joining. For this morning's session, we hope to provide you with some clear insights into the INN8 platform and unpack sort of the Elevate program with one of our guests this morning. We also have opportunity to answer some of the questions, hopefully later in the session this morning. So you're welcome to pop in the chat any questions that you might have. We'll see how many we get to. And those that we don't, we'll distribute a Q&A after the session to all of the advisors and stakeholders on the call this morning. My name is Shane Nell, and with me this morning, I have the head of proposition, marketing, and servicing at INN8 platform, Michael Summerton. Michael, welcome.
Hi, Shane. Thanks so much for having me on today. And a big thank you to the advisors who are listening. Certainly, without their support, we wouldn't be able to do this. So it's been a really great 12 months. And thanks for their attention and jumping online to listen to us today.
Absolutely, I think it's very much appreciated, and it's always a privilege for me to spend some time with you, Michael, and unpack your brain a bit. So I look forward to that. So we've got quite a lot that we need to sort of get done in an hour, right? And I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole with certain topics, but I think it's important to provide clarity. And a large portion of today's session will be sort of an update on Elevate and where we're heading. But I'd like to sort of set the scene before we get to the Elevate discussion with a starting point of INN8. I believe it was around sort of 2018-19 when I first heard about INN8, right? Sort of this rumor started of INN8. So perhaps you can sort of give us a bit of a background of when and where INN8's journey started.
Thanks, Shane. So, I mean, the origin story of INN8 and investment platform is really the origin story of our fledgling platform industry in South Africa. Roughly 20 years ago, this concept of a LISP came about, and the bulking of client monies into unit trust funds became popular. And almost in the blink of an eye, 20 years is not a long time. And now almost 90% of all retail unit trust monies are via some sort of LISP platform in the industry. And that's a really big number. And so this concept of a platform, while it started as very much a LISP, the concept of an investment platform, I think, has broadened and become the place where advisors and their clients go to service their investments and perform and execute on their advice activities. And it's become very popular within the South African context. So that's the sort of starting point for me. Certainly, expectations around platforms have increased. The regulatory change and responding to that has been sort of very important. And then Standlib ran their platform and have been running a platform for a number of years. And that was our first foray as a group into the investment platform space. And as you point out, sort of several years ago, some executives got around the table and they were looking to the future to say, well, where does this game evolve to? And what do we need to do in terms of preparing ourselves for the future? And that was and one of the actions we took was to invest in a future fit digital way of doing business, particularly from an investment platform standpoint, renewing the legacy technology stack that we have at Standard LISP, and investing for the future to bring those efficiencies and help advisors be as effective as possible in their advice processes from a platform standpoint.
So this has been a long journey for a number of years that we've been part of.
It's been a very long journey, and just to sort of finish it off there, Shane, is that where does the concept of INN8 come from? And what we've noticed within the group and certainly within the market is that as entities have grown, specialization becomes the name of the game. And so asset manager like Standlib, we need them to be the best asset manager possible. And so they're specializing and focusing on asset management. And similarly, so we want to be the best investment administration place to go to for your investments. And so we created this concept of INN8 to be the group's future place for retail wealth administration in the business.
So was that really the case for change from a platform perspective?
Yes, so that was the case for change. I guess one of the driving factors was being able to respond to regulatory change, like
Mm,
two-pot, for example. Uh, it's going to become increasingly difficult for the technology behind the standard Lisp to respond to changes like that in future, as well as market demand, the ability to add new types of products, new selections. And if you look at where, I mean, we're not going to talk about AI today, but fundamentally supporting things like AI is the availability of data and being able to access data, not just the balances of your unit trust funds and your client data, but actually interaction data, how busy we are on the web, what we do with our activities. And we can only really take full advantage of that with a digital based platform.
mm,
And so I see already one of the questions on the chat is why did we not just keep the name Stanlib? So we are keeping the name Stanlib and they will remain an asset manager into the future. And we've created this concept of INN8 as a digital first platform.
mm. Okay. So we've heard this phrase, the new way of work, being thrown around, right? And I think more so post-COVID, right? So we went through COVID and people logged on to Zoom meetings and Teams meetings and became sort of more digital, the way that we service our clients, engage with stakeholders and collaborate. There's been immense growth in the way we do our business. And that new way of work, when it comes to the Innate platform as itself, how does that enable the advisor out there to work in a fashion that is suitable in the environment that we find ourselves in currently?
Yeah. So we've tried to work and build our platform in a way that fits into the way advisors like to do business. And perhaps I know not many of advisors have done this yet on the platform, but we have a digital retirement journey.
Mm,
And and so if you have a client who's retiring, we recognized that retiring is not a once-off process. It's a series of conversations. And so our digital retirement journey, you can start it, you can save it, you can come back to it, you can select which accounts you want to retire from. It goes and fetches and does all the tax stuff that you need to do. And then only once you're completely happy with the client, then you can submit the instruction. Whereas I felt like in the old way of doing things, you had this form and there was a finality around it. And then if something changed, you had to go and update the form. So I think going forward, especially with a digital business, you can capture information and then you don't need to recapture that several times each time you do an instruction. And so
mm.
we're hoping to bring some efficiencies to the way that advisors do business.
So you load that client once, and from there you continue different journeys for that client, from retirement to post-retirement and others.
100%.
Um, well, I mean, it's interesting about the question already. Why don't we keep the name Stanlib? But I think in large from the field's perspective specifically, a lot of the time the question is why? Why change from standard Lisp to innate platform? We know the standard Lisp, it's been working for us for a number of years. We understand it, and we're comfortable with it. So why do we need to have this change from standard Lisp to the innate platform?
So I'm just going to go back to and reference our cyclical activity, especially when it comes to technology stacks. So
Mm,
these changes probably come around every 20 years or so. You need to adopt a new piece of technology. And if you want to remain innovative as a business and respond to market change, then it's important that you go through these phases from time to time and refresh the tech stack that you have. And so yes, there's a technology change, but it's also a new adoption of ways of working. And so
mm,
I think if we continued on the existing path as a business, we would continue to be sort of middle of the road in terms of service and effectiveness. And that's not where we want to be for advisors. We want to be the top performing platform. We want to give you the great service. And part of that is a refreshed digital offering. Now, I acknowledge that we also have an important part to play in terms of the people who pick up the phones and the people who answer the emails and follow up on section 14, etc. But all of this works together. And so I think that's an important step here is yes, we're refreshing a tech change, we're also managing a change of doing business, and then we're making sure that our service continues to improve into the future that supports the technology change as well.
So it's a portion of a larger value proposition delivery, I guess, than the existing platform has. So where does Innate platform fit into the larger Standard Bank group? And that's often a question that I come across. Like, I've made an example of I have a Standard Bank email address, Standard Bank signature, a Liberty contract, So where do I fit in? So where does the Innate platform fit into the Standard Bank group?
Okay, so one thing we didn't do was launch a whole lot of new legal entities, which I'm very
Mm,
happy about. We actually had a strategy at the beginning of this project, which was reuse and recycle. And so the same Standard Wealth Management LISP entity and the license is the same license that Innate uses, as well as the same retirement funds and the same life license. We use Liberty Group Limited as the life license for the living annuity. So all of the legal entities that participate in this platform and that you have access to are the same that you would have at Standard Lisp. In fact, Innate, when we registered the trademark, we registered the trademark in the name of Standard Wealth Management. And so the group actually owns Innate entirely, and as it does Standard and Liberty. And now that we form part of the broader Standard Bank group, you'll see sort of subtle changes coming through. When we developed the brand, for example, there was just this request to sort of have a nod to the legacy of Liberty and the important pride that we have in that sort of dark blue. And then
mm,
there's this sort of slightly lighter blue of Standard Bank. And you see that comes through in many of our sort of logo and the various colors that Innate has um, uh, in the brand. And so that's
mm,
also an important part of the group. We're effectively owned by Liberty, and Liberty's owned by Standard Bank. And so that's the collaboration between the life company, the administration hub, and the Standard Bank group at large. I think that's a very important thing because while we like to have our own identity as a platform, it's also nice to know for clients and advisors that you have sort of Big Brother looking over your shoulder, everything from governance and reporting right the way through to, if you have a mistake, we have a sort of a funder who can support those and fix those errors.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I see the question coming in, and it's at least to my follow-up question to that is, I've been within group for 18 years, and the Standard Bank brand, being the largest bank in Africa, is well known, in South Africa and Africa, and so is Liberty and Stand Up, and I had an advisor say to me last week, it makes sense. It's Stan and Lib, it's Stand Up. There's trust in it. There's credibility, and there's this sort of feeling of where's the Innate brand in the market? Are clients aware who Innate is, what they stand for, that they're part of Standard Bank Group? And sort of from our point of view, and we've had these discussions offline before, Michael. So what are we doing on our end to sort of take the Innate branding to our market?
Yeah. So for the past few years, we've certainly focused mainly on advisor awareness and
Mm,
recall around the brand. So you've probably found us, stalking you on LinkedIn or on your biz news articles. You would have seen the Innate sort of banners popping up,
mm,
and those have been primarily targeted at financial advisors because they are our first clients. Innate is an intermediated proposition, so our clients are valuable, but advisors are our first clients. So that's the first thing to think about. We also knew that as part of this rollout and shift from Standard Lisp into Innate, we would have to start talking to clients more directly. And so you'll see as part of this Elevate program, we will be increasingly showing up where clients find ourselves. So if they look on Biz News or Business Day or read the newspaper, those ads will increasingly be targeted on them. We'll also have a series of sort of media engagements and whether it's PR or articles on various websites talking to this change, introducing it, and almost providing us some more air cover. We didn't go too big as part of tranche one. Tranche one was very much a more contained tranche,
mm.
but certainly as the volumes grow into T2 and T3, we will expand that air cover from a brand perspective as well, and it'll be very closely tied to Standard and Liberty and the Standard Bank Group.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a very important thing for us because that's what we represent in the market, right? Is the brand, and I think the more we can incorporate and take that to market on behalf of advisor, it makes it a lot easier to engage with the client. I sort of want to quickly throw back something to you that I'd like to. So, I mean, we've been well known to sort of start new things within the business and the first to market, with Innate, the big tech change as well. Our competitors out there, do they sit in a similar position from a tech perspective? Are we moving ahead of them? What's going to happen to their platforms?
It's something that not many people talk about because the knowledge of back-end technology stacks is not really broadly known in the market.
Mm.
But what I can say is that there are a number of large platforms out there who, for whatever reason, were on and still are on legacy technology stacks. Now, we know that the concept of re-platforming or building a brand new platform and moving across to it is certainly no easy feat. But but we're substantially through that process. So we're on the other side of a very difficult journey that many of our competitors, and I'm not going to name them, but many of our competitors are only just embarking on that journey, having to refresh their technology stacks and rebuilding and replatforming. In fact, one of our largest competitors has made several acquisitions in the market, and they're going to have to go through a few different migrations in order to get one single tech stack. And that's probably, my estimation, a multi-decade process. And so,
Yeah.
and so I think from a replatforming and design perspective, we're on the other side of that. And now's the time to make the most of that investment and benefit from that. And this Elevate program is sort of the first step of embracing that change.
Okay. So I'd like to sort of move quickly into Elevate, but perhaps we can just look at the couple of questions that's come up, and while they're there, I see there's a question sort of saying, when will the existing list be completely switched off or decommissioned?
So the existing standard Lisp will be completely switched off, uh, most likely by the end of 2026. And certainly all of your client documents and tax certificates, etc., will be available right the way through post tax year 2026. But there's a whole process around archiving and decommissioning that will have to be very well governed and followed. And so that process probably only kicks in toward the end of 2026. But in terms of closing to new business and not accepting any new client accounts into Standard Lisp, that last bus will probably end towards the end of this year, and we'll talk through some of those
Yeah.
specifics as part of the webinar, Shane.
Okay. Right. So just the last question that I think we need to address is, so we know the standard Lisp book is elevated over to the INN8 platform, but we still have a large DUT book that remains behind. What's going to happen with the DUT? Is it going to be elevated as well to the INN8 platform? Will it remain where it is?
So the UT business has certainly developed quite separately from the standard Lisp business. They are
Mm.
effectively on two different technology stacks. And that question about if and when the UT business migrates to the exact same platform as INN8 is still to be answered. There's quite a lot of very technical work that has to happen in order for that choice to be made. And so while the UT are sort of on their own journey for now, those very strategic high-level decisions are still being discussed. And so from a retail wealth management perspective, certainly from a platform, we will be aggregating as many of the group assets as possible onto our new platform.
Okay. Mike, so let's get stuck into Elevate, right? My existence and yours for a number of months and years, I guess now. Um, I used to have hair like you, a long time ago. So I think the starting point for Elevate would be, um, it was a sort of a put money in the swear jar when you say migrate. So why do we talk about Elevate and not migrate?
Yeah, very important, Shane. So remember, this is at its core a technology stack change and a data transfer from the Lisp into the INN8 environments. The I mentioned earlier that there's no change in legal entities. So all of the same terms and conditions apply, and we'll talk a bit more about pricing later. But effectively, there's no change for client here. And so we opted to call it something different than migrate because the word migration triggers all sorts of sort of angst amongst clients and advisors. And it's not necessary in this case. We're not changing any terms and conditions. We're not repricing anyone. We're not going to move you out of any unit trust funds. So it's very much a like for like change. And so we're calling it Elevate because there's an aspect of digital way of doing business, which we're going to sort of change, manage through the process. But importantly, we're just really moving data from one technology stack to the other. And that's why
Mm.
we've called it Elevate.
So there's a phase approach to Elevate, right? And obviously T1's kicked off, and we'll get to a bit of T1 in a moment. So, what does that phase approach look like? A number of tranches over how many months is that taking place?
So this is, I mean, probably 7 years in the making, but really, from a technical and a program perspective, this has been running for well over 18 months in the lead up to tranche one, which went live over the last weekend with very few issues. I mean, it was probably the most successful thing we've done as a platform.
Mm.
It was a phenomenal success, and that was really attributable to the number of we call dress rehearsals or preparation runs in a test environment, and we did up to 7 or 8 prior to the actual go live of Elevate Tranche One. And there was an unbelievable level of precision and reconciliation around not just the units in client accounts, but all of their data, their debit orders, etc., which had to be, moved across from one system to the
Yes.
other. And so that level of rigor and preparation will continue in the lead up to tranche two, which we're currently aiming for September. That is the sort of go live date for tranche two. And we're hoping to conclude all of our Elevate processes during Q1 2026 as part of tranche three. So we've effectively split the standard list book up into 3 tranches. Tranche one was, as I said, went live last weekend, roughly about 4 billion Rand, roughly about 4,000 clients with 125 Liberty advisors who participated in that. Tranche two, we're still busy with the data analysis and seeing which clients qualify, etc. But it's likely going to be in the 30 to 40 billion Rand range and roughly 1,000 advisors, potentially 18, 19,000 clients. And then tranche three will sort of be a mop-up tranche. So there'll be all the sort of tail end of advisors and clients, and any of the funnies that didn't quite make it into tranche two will pick up as part of tranche three early 2026.
Okay. So it's quite a massive task ahead. But I think the sort of positive sentiment there from a successful T1 is immense. And I mean, I've been working closely with that team out for a number of months, and it's exceptional the individual people's skill, knowledge, and abilities that they have to make this work. And I saw the hard work and the dry runs going in the back end to ensure that we can deliver. And from my side, I just want to say thanks to you and your team for that as well. We really appreciate it. From distribution makes our job a lot easier. So I see we have some questions, but we'll get back to them in a moment. Um, so one of the sort of concerns that was brought up in our early discussions with T1 advisors was the view of my client book report on the Stanlib Lisp, and compared to what's available currently on the INN8 platform. That's the first one. And secondly was sort of once I've elevated my client, and he's been with Stanley for 2 years as an example, and he's now on INN8. 6 months later, I review the client. How do I have a review discussion with the clients with performance of one platform and performance on another platform?
Yeah, so just as part of any data migration, you typically don't carry across, all the many years of individual transactional history per account. And that's why, Stand-up List or Stand-up Online will be available, through Feb tax year end to make sure you get all your tax certificates, etc. But in terms of the most important thing which advisors were saying to us was we want to be able to see our market value while the client was at the LISP and also as he grows his future history at INN8, and also be able to report on the internal rates of return. I don't want to lose a performance track record. And so we've built a performance graph specifically for that reason. We're going to, for each tranche of clients that comes across to INN8, we're restoring certain aspects of their historical data, and that'll be available on an ad hoc request basis for now. And we'll build it into the web towards the end of the year. But it's effectively a one-pager with a market line graph and an internal rate of return table so that you can talk to your client, and it's kind of a seamless transition as far as market values and internal rates of return are concerned between the LISP and INN8.
Okay. And how do I get access to this report? Because it's not automated as yet, if I'm correct.
Sure. So it'll be on request basis for the next few months, and then we'll build it into on a whenever you need it, it'll be available to you on the web after September.
Okay, cool. Kerwin and Cobus, I see your questions there. We'll get to that in a moment. I just want to ensure we get through some of the topics now and get to the questions a bit later, if you don't mind. So what's the rollout and implementation plan for Elevate 2? I mean, today we've got the webinar. We have some advisors online. That's the first that they've been engaged on in terms of the INN8 platform Elevate program. So how does that rollout look from today onwards until September?
Yeah. Okay. First thing is don't panic. We've just done this and we did it really well. So we're going to hold your hand through the whole process. And there are a couple of important principles which we hold really dear when it comes to running the program and what we call the sort of market readiness and communications aspect to the program. And the first thing is around communications. So it's global best practice tells us that you have to talk to advisors and clients at least 3 times before you actually press go live and move their units into the new platform. And so starting in July and into August and September, we'll have 3 separate communications going out with varying levels of detail. And for each of those communications, importantly, we do an internal version to all the stakeholders internally within the group, senior execs, et cetera, et cetera. So they're aware of everything. Then advisor gets the communication. And so, for example, in the first communication in July, you'll get a link to go and find your in-scope clients. And then only after that, clients will get their first version of the communication, which starts to talk about the Elevate progress. And sort of that process is repeated 3 times in the lead up to September. And then as we get closer to sort of the action period, there are 1 or 2 SMSs to advisors and to clients, depending on which product they're in. So, for example, the living annuity, we will pay those living annuities earlier in the month of September in preparation for go live. So there's a few sort of ad hoc SMSs that go out during that time. And then the final communication is really once the data has landed within INN8, clients will get a welcome email and an invitation to create their username and password so that they can log in and see their investments.
I think that sort of speaks to what Quibus is asking here, sort of how much time will we have to communicate with our clients, you know? So I know a lot of advisors in Tier 1 want to sort of, specifically with high net worth individual clients, sit down and have a personal discussion with them, perhaps some older clients. So they've got a sort of 3-month runway up till then. Those client lists will be made available quite soon.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. So there's a few sort of technicalities around pulling that data from standard list. Remember that it's live data, so it's
Mm.
changing every day. Every time you send in a switch form or withdrawal, the data changes. And so we're going to aim for a particular date in July to give advisors their sort of first view of which of their clients are effectively at that point in time qualifying for tranche 2 in terms of the products that they hold and the unit trust funds that they're in. Those clients might drop off. Maybe they do 100% withdrawal or whatever, and they might drop off the list. But importantly, they start to receive those communications and form part of the process in the lead up. And that's what we saw is we started with, say, 4,500 clients for T1, and we ended up just short of 4,000. So there's always a little bit of a drop off in the lead up to the tranche.
Okay. And I mean, I know with the communication cadences, there's a lot of time to go onto the sort of CBD portal, get the client list and start engaging. There's a lot of collateral also around that we'll be positioning. Just quickly on the high watermark guarantee on the Liberty Living Annuity, we'll get to that when we talk about in-scope products. And that'll sort of answer that question. And then just to Kerwin, from an offshore perspective, there is sort of a offshore launch coming soon within the tide space. So keep an eye out for that. And there'll be a big discussion in terms of where we're heading for offshore and sort of what will happen with existing products as well. Okay, Mark. So let's get into that. I mean, that's actually interesting. I know in T1 there was a specific scope of clients and advisor that we included, right? And certain clients qualified, certain advisor qualified, and certain product sets qualified. And it was a bit smaller than we aim to do in tranche 2. So in tranche 2, what will be included that wasn't in tranche 1?
Okay, so from a product perspective, Shane, nothing is going to be added. So it's all the
Mm.
same products that were in scope for tranche 1, and that was namely the classic investment plan, the tax-free savings account, the 3 pension funds, RA, PRES, and PRES, and the living annuity. So those remain in scope for tranche two. The main additions will be things like the asset universe. So for tranche one, we didn't include anyone who was in a model portfolio. Model portfolios are in scope for T2, and so you'll see that quite a few more of your clients will sort of qualify for tranche two. And then we're going to expand the universe a little bit in terms of the type of clients. So tranche one really just had individual clients, but we'll be looking at legal entities, minors, etc., and building out that scope as well. So it is a little bit more ambitious in terms of the client scope and product scope for tranche two, but still sort of contained to what products are currently open at Standard Lisp.
Okay, so the big one that gets asked is Bold, right? Because it's got the high watermark guarantee, sits from Liberty on the Standard platform, and that's sort of the question is going, will Bold remain there or is it elevating? And I'm guessing that it's not part of Elevate Tranche 2.
So Bold is out of scope for tranche two. So we do have some plans in place for Bold, but certainly not going to be making any changes before September. And we'll talk about Bold separately from the Elevate program.
Okay. So in tranche two, right, I've got in-scope clients from an advisor point of view, understand sort of from a solution set who's going to be elevated. Will all my clients be elevated at the same time? So will I wake up one morning and see, well, my entire book is now shifted over from Standard Lisp and dropped into the INN8 platform?
So, I mean, ideally that would be the case, but I think when you start picking through the data, particularly for tranche one, I think some of the advisors would have loved to have moved their whole book in one go. It's very likely that a much bigger portion of your book from Standard Lisp will form part of tranche two, and that for tranche three we'll sort of have the stragglers and exceptions, and maybe I don't know, the one account was in Reg 28 breach or whatever. Like there's always going to be a few exceptions, but by and large, the bulk of your book will move during tranche two. And then if you've got some sort of funny legacy products that are perhaps closed at the moment, and we're having to make other plans for those, we've mentioned Bold. Not many people use personal share portfolios, but we've got a plan in place for that for tranche three. So tranche three is really going to be a sort of all-encompassing tranche, a bit more ambitious in terms of scope, but certainly a catch-all for anyone who didn't quite make it into tranche two.
Okay. So what would the expectation be from us as distribution platform of advisors and clients in T2?
Yeah, so in terms of the pattern of activity, what we noticed was there's quite a bit of activity around client lists, checking to see who's in, who's out, and sort of assessing whether you that you sort of feel comfortable with that, answering questions, what's going to happen with fees, etc., and we'll get into that. But then actually over the weekends of go live in September, there's nothing to do for advisor and client other than to wait and read the communications. Because we have effectively reused the same legal entities that Standard Lisp is based on, we're not asking client to sign any pieces of paper, and we're not asking advisor to collect anything from client. Where we might ask for some help is around data remediation. So we have an extensive project at the Lisp that's been remediating data for a number of years now, and roughly 1 in every 10 clients, we need to reach out to advisor or client to confirm something. Perhaps their surname has changed, or we don't have an email address on file. So that it's really important we get as much clean data as possible. We do have some ways and means of the other 9 out of 10. We've got databases that we consult and ways to fill gaps in our data. But every now and then we're going to come back to advisor to say we need an updated email address for a client. So that's some of the preparation that may lead up to September, and that's really just so we can contact clients and keep them informed with the changes.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned to an advisor yesterday that myself, I've changed email address, right, from Liberty to Standard, and my Standard detail still says Liberty. So I'll be one of those having to sort of put in a form to say, please change it to the correct one. So I just want to get to a few questions here, if I may, Mike, from Gerard Stoker, sort of saying, I know from an LWA DFM perspective, they're not currently able to manually migrate model portfolios it will have to be done during the Elevate process. Is that correct?
Yes. So there are one or two exceptions within the model portfolio space, and that is one of them, where
Mm,
we certainly can transfer them as part of the Elevate process. We've built a whole engine to essentially convert the data and move it into the innate environment. And currently, our ops teams aren't able to do that particular one as a one by one transfer. So if Gerard can just work with us, and we'll do it as part of the September move.
okay. And then just I want to address one question that's come up over the last sort of week and a half is about the retail activity count on Stanham compared to Innate Flow. Just for the audience, we've met with our counterparts at Liberty, and we are looking at sort of what the data feed is going through to them, how to resolve that, and we'll have feedback quite soon on retail activity count on Innate Flow. So yeah, we are aware of that, and we are busy addressing it. We get into a bit of costs. I see there's a comment on costs compared from Innate to Lisp, and I think we'll get into that in a moment, as soon as we spoke about benefits or elevating. So perhaps I
Yeah,
can
Shane,
just
let's
sort
jump into
of
fees and pricing now. I think it's a good
okay,
one.
let's go to fees. Yeah, let's go to
Okay,
fees then.
so fees are very sensitive topic for clients, and certainly those of you who were around in 2018, 2019, we had a reprice at Standard Lisp. And the reason for that reprice was really to align both the Lisp and Innate in terms of the pricing methodology that we offer. It's a tiered platform fee. It sort of slides down from as your assets increase, and so the more money you have with us, the lower effective rate you can pay, and that sort of stacks up quite nicely with most of the competitors in the industry. The main difference between Standard Lisp and Innate is really the additional opportunities for aggregation that clients have at Innate by default. So at Innate, we do by default ID level aggregations. We add up all of the client accounts and we use that total to calculate their fee. At the Lisp, it doesn't do it automatically today.
Mm,
In addition, if you have money on Innate offshore as a client, we will include those assets as part of your local fee calculation. And that'll be the same going forward with the international platform that's busy being launched. And so these additional opportunities, and also there's family pricing. You know, if you have a family, mom, dad, family trust, etc., those can form part of a family, which gives you an extra benefit in terms of pricing for your client. And so while we are we are not increasing any fees for clients as part of Elevate, there will be certainly some benefits for some clients where they might pay a lower fee automatically. Um, but in terms of some legacy arrangements, and let's use the tax-free savings account as an example at Standard Lisp. So currently it's a flat fee of 0.2% plus VAT, and that fee, all the clients in the TIFSA will continue to enjoy that fee once they are at Innate. So we'll move them across at exactly the same fee that they had at the Lisp, and that would apply for any other sort of legacy fee arrangements that some clients might have. We did put a stop to many of those in 2019, but they've continued to enjoy some of those sort of historical discounted fees. And the principle is you'll move across at your existing fee, and you have an option to move to the tiered platform methodology. So, for example, if you and your advisor you work together and you say, "Hold on, actually, I can aggregate all my assets and I can pay an even lower effective fee rate," you're welcome just to ask us, and we'll move you across the platform fee. But it is a one-way door. So once you move across to platform fee, you give up those legacy fees as Standard Lisp. So it really is the best of both worlds for clients, same or lower fees, and then perpetuate the legacy discounts that they may have into the future.
okay. I mean, while we're there, I think it's good to jump into this freeze period, right? Which is very important. Now, and it is in the FAQs detailed quite comprehensively for client and advisor, sort of what's happening on what day. So you're very aware of what are they actually busy with today during the freeze period. So what is the expectation from advisor and client during that 7 day freeze period, and why is it in place? Why do we have the 7 day freeze period?
Okay, so let's just clarify. So what we're talking about is a freeze period in the 7 days leading up to when we physically move the data across from Standard Lisp. So it'll be for a week in September, where we're
Mm,
asking advisors and clients not to process any transactions on the in-scope clients, whether that's a switch or withdrawal or whatever. so that we can keep that data as stable as possible. So when our technical teams take the cut, there's no sort of in-flight transactions, which might effectively disqualify a client from forming part of that tranche. And so we want to keep as many clients in as possible. If there's a withdrawal in progress, we might have to remove them. And then we sort of wasted all the comms leading up to that. And so that 7-day freeze period is really just to keep as many clients and the data as static as possible so that we can have a successful Elevate go live. And what tranche one advisors typically did was if client had some liquidity requirements, we just processed that withdrawal before the freeze period started. Or if they had an annual review coming up, process those switches if you need to prior to the freeze period.
Okay. I think the big question that we have as well is my client is currently invested in a specific fund on the standard list, right? Um, when the client's elevated, would they be elevated to the exact same class fund? Is there implication or CGT implication or any movement that we need to be concerned about?
Yeah. So no concerns at all. Importantly, this is not, there's no transaction based in the Elevate program itself. So physically, it's a movement of the client's units from one bulk account at Stanlib to another bulk account at Stanlib. So there's no change in beneficial ownership. And so there's not even a switch involved. It's literally a movement of units from one account to the other. And then we reflect that data in INN8 as effectively an INN8 branded product and statement, etc. But there's no CGT implications for clients, for products that have CGT as
Yes.
part of the Elevate move itself.
Okay. I just want to get to our note. Cobus Klein saying it's very important that we as advisors communicate first with our clients with a human touch, which I totally agree with, that handhold for the clients like we would like to do with our advisors as well. And I'm guessing that is sort of the lead up month from June to the end of June where we send out the first communication would be that opportunity. So, we hope that gives enough lead time for advisors to at least get the message out, engage, set up appointments and time with them.
Yes,
Dean
so
on the
Shane, just
answer.
to
Yeah.
support that, over the next month, we will make available to advisors the frequently asked questions document. There is an advisor-centric one, which is quite a lot more detailed, and there's a
Mm,
client-centric one as well. And you'll be able to read through, and most of the questions that you're actually seeing here are included there.
yeah.
Very specific around freeze period, pricing, etc. It's all sort of contained within that document. And then obviously, if you want to talk to us, you're welcome. Both our standard list and our innate contact numbers have been trained and resourced to answer any of your queries that you might have in the lead up. And then only from
Mm,
July, we'll start communicating to clients. So over the next 6 weeks, it's an important time to sort of familiarize yourself with the actual program itself. But importantly, for those advisors who maybe haven't transacted on Innate yet, finish accreditation, do the onboarding and training, and become familiar with where your clients are going to be moving to on the Innate platform.
mm. So the correspondence from Greenland, so the correspondence that goes out to advisor and client, who does that actually come from? Does that come from Innate Connect, from Innate or Stand-up?
Are you talking about the actual email addresses?
So the actual no, so the actual communication regarding clients being elevated, that comes directly from Stand-up Lisp.
Correct. So the first com comes from Stanlib itself, and then
Mm,
over time that will start to shift to an innate voice. So it's also we're managing client's hand. You'll see the standard brand initially, then you'll see standard and innate, and then the last welcome letter for client is only innate branded. So we're also trying to manage
mm.
that brand journey through the program.
Okay. I see there's quite a few questions, so I'm going to finish off shortly, and then we can see how many questions we can work through,
Okay.
Mike. I think the important thing is, so we know we can elevate assets. We've seen it. We've proven in tranche one, right? But only in collaboration with our advisors. In tranche two, it's a larger scope of clients and advisors. And the question there would be, how do we maintain the service and operational capabilities of Innate during that time as we see a sort of increase in volume of business being placed on Innate?
Yeah, 100%. So we've got a dedicated plan which sets out both the volumes that we're expecting, and we check back to that each month. And tranche one has helped us immensely because we can see where, the calls are spiking or the transactions increasing, the activity on the web.
Mm.
We've also matured we call it surveillance. It sounds quite sort of CIA, but it's we have a whole lot of uh, software monitoring the activity on the web. So we know if 150 advisors are all trying to get a statement at one time and it starts to hang, then we've got people in the background who can go and alleviate that. And so advisors who use the platform today might have seen that we improved the client landing page loading speeds in the past few months. And we will
Yes.
continue with many of those if it's forecasting with the increased client activity as well as the increased advisor activity over the next few months. And so that's from a technical and infrastructure perspective. We added a whole new server to make the website go faster. And then from
Mm,
a ops and service capacity, we've also done and hired additional people in the call center within the operations space, so that as the volumes start to tick up in advance of these tranches, we're able to respond to those, and we're continuing to meet those SLAs within our ops and service environments. As you can
mm,
expect, some of these uh, uh, volumes at Standard Lisp will start to decrease as advisors transact less on Standard Lisp and more on INN8. And we're
mm.
planning for that shift over time, as well as hiring a few people in advance of some of those, for example, in advance of September, so that we're prepared for any increases in volumes.
Okay. I see we've got a question here in terms of, I know Leanne and team has worked a lot on communication in T1, and there's a question saying, is there any communication drafted for advisors that they can share with clients prior to us communicating? And I believe we do have some collateral in terms of positioning of INN8 and Elevate available.
Absolutely, and we'll make that available as part of the follow-ups to these. So this is really just an initial engagement
Mm.
to give you an overview of the program, but there's a whole lot of collateral and FAQ documents and branded brochures, etc., which you can use to engage with your clients.
Mm. Okay. And then I see trust also coming across in T2. So we are, legal entities are in scope for tranche two.
Currently, we're scoping legal entities in for tranche two.
Okay.
Yes,
All right. Brilliant. And then just before we move on, if you're transferring over tax-free investment from Stanley List to Unite, the client administration fee will increase. Will the Unite platform fees be adjusted for tax-free investments? I believe we'll be actually transferring those TFAs over on the existing pricing from Stanley.
correct. So
Okay.
if you're already a client at the LISP, you will continue to enjoy that existing fee on your TIFSA, and we'll move you across at that existing fee that you have at the LISP.
Okay. I see we have a SLA question there, and I believe you've answered that with the big server build we did and the movement of assets, resources across to sort of handle some of the volume coming in at night. And we're very comfortable. The team that we work with closely there from a servicing perspective is fantastic. And I do believe in their ability to maintain the service levels that we have at Innate at the moment. Um, and then just quick, please confirm that the admin assistant can be linked to multiple advisors. So in other words, we have advisors that have shared assistants, specifically largely in the entrepreneur space, and we do have the ability for advisors be to multiple advisors to be linked to personal assistants.
Yeah, and also we
Okay.
recognize, Shane, that Liberty advisors, some uh, different advisors work in different ways. And so we
Mhm.
will work with whether it's your assistant or perhaps you have an in-house team that looks after some of your applications, or you have a group service doing that. We'll work with each of those in whatever way that you work. We'll fit into that. And we've certainly we've got some plans in place to further supplement this rollout of the platform.
Okay. So, Mark, I sort of want to continue with some of the questions because it's quite interesting before we close off,
Yeah,
finally on Elevate. And I think this one is quite interesting. A lot of work has gone into that, and it speaks to the sort of supervision compliance component of mitigating risk. And it talks to our or your workflow uh, process that you've worked on currently to sort of have could I say, a pause in the process at firm level to mitigate risk for key individuals or sales managers for specific advisors.
100%. So it's very important. So for two aspects, the one is there's value in stepping through the digital journeys because there's a number of validations built into those, whether it's product and legal requirements or documentation requirements that the web automatically does, that the innate platform sort of supports compliance out the box. But then just in terms of submitting instructions to the platform and working with a large, sort of super large network like Liberty, we're going to be implementing what we call a advice control support process. And so when that instruction comes through to the back end of the platform, we're going to have a team reviewing those and checking that the actual instruction we received matches up with the documentation coming in from advisor and client. And so we've got some additional, more robust controls in place where previously the process was very much straight through, and that maybe caused a little bit of anxiety for some advisors. We're going to be helping that process to be a little bit less straight through, but certainly much more rigorous and controlled. And we'll be rolling that change
Yes.
out over the next couple of months.
Okay. So I just want to note Cooper's Klein saying sort of he's had positive feedback from Elevate Tranche 1 that gives him a bit more comfortability in T2 and wishes as well. So thanks, Cooper, for the positive feedback. We do appreciate that. And yes, we will engage with you to see how we can best communicate what that project plan looks like so you can plan your rollout to your customers as well as you possibly could. We also have a question here reporting work before the T day, if you can call it that, Mr. Linder. I will be able to update clients on investment returns 3, 5, or 10 years history, for example. So that speaks to the performance graph that's now available at Hello INN8. In other words, I've had a client at Stanley for 10 years. He's elevated over to INN8. 6 months later, it's his review. I'm able then to request from Hello INN8 a performance graph that'll actually tie those performance up over time until we've automated for advisors. Is that correct, Mike?
Correct, 100%. So
Okay.
we'll do it on
So,
an ad hoc basis for the next few months, and then post September that'll be available on the web to download whenever you need it.
okay. I see there's sort of a question going, we're talking about standalone list products being elevated on the 8 platform. Is there any expectation or talk of Liberty products being elevated onto the 8 platform?
So I think the advisor mentioned evolve. So from I call them a traditional life insurance policy based investments. There are no plans currently to migrate some of those sort of more traditional wrapper life
Mm,
insurance style investments. Those are sort of policy related and are quite different from what we would call the platform environment. And so you can almost see them as like two quite distinct universes of investment or product types. Certainly,
mm,
we can go a long way to improve the reporting for Liberty audience. And I know there's teams within Liberty looking at how to consolidate some of that investment reporting so a lot better. But the administration of those investments will remain where it is for now. So the evolves and your agiles and your agile twos, etc. Nothing's changing there. Certainly in the short to medium term at all.
okay.
We're moving the vanilla Lisp business across to INN8.
Yes. I think this is a good question for you, Mike. You might have some experience there. Is the INN8 platform is INN8 the most advanced Lisp system in RSA, even more so than the Alan Gray platform?
It's a tricky question, Shane.
Mm,
And while I think you have to look at it from two perspectives. So the one is the backend system supporting different platforms. We're being INN8. We're on one of a small handful of systems which are future fit and sort of ready for scale. So the back end of INN8 is a company called Bravura, and they have a product called Sonata, and it currently manages trillions of pounds and dollars in investments worldwide. One of the main clients is Fidelity, and so this is sort of retail wealth administration, very sophisticated at a massive scale, and that's why
mm,
we've invested and partnered with Bravura. Um, Alan Gray specifically are on I would consider sort of a more legacy tech stack. They've certainly made it work for them,
mm,
but it comes with certain challenges. So you've had to modularize a lot of your stuff, and then a
mm,
lot of the detail sits within very separate modules around that service offering. And so and I'm not going to, I can't make any conclusions about Alan Gray, but certainly a business like that where they might struggle in future is responding to change. So, for example, if you want to do a two-pot savings withdrawal on INN8, we can process that for you today, no problem. At Alan Gray, they've got a 2-week turnaround. And
mm,
so they're going to increasingly be these examples where like we're the same or better than other platforms. And certainly acknowledging from a reporting perspective, we've got lots of work to do. And we're working on a number of different solutions to sort of meet those needs of advisors.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to note that this session is being recorded, and this recording will be made available afterwards. So you're welcome to after the session, and if you have some time to go back and have a view and forward and pause at the important bits that you'd like to rehash. Will there be a commission fee strip, or will full advisor fees be paid across? Full advisor fees are paid across from INN8 over to Liberty on a weekly basis.
Correct. That's
Yeah,
right.
so there's no strip on our end. It's quite a long question, so bear with me. Uh, how long will it take to emulate and improve on the functionality that both advisors and clients are used on the current standard platform? For example, the detailed reporting that is on par or better. Sorry, as persons keep posted, they keep moving. Uh, the detailed historic statements generally are very detailed. Can we expect the same level of information? And as Pierre has asked, this detail from inception of investment. So I guess that speaks sort of more to the automation of both book report and performance graph, and then the detailed functionality that we can expect in that space.
100%. And I think there's additional tools and reporting which Clint is referring to, which certainly we would like to make available within the INN8 space. We have focused on fleshing out our data capabilities, and certainly there's very rich data available from the platform. And now it's about, okay, how can we showcase that data to clients and advisors in really meaningful, insightful ways? And the solution might look slightly different for a Liberty audience who have a number of other solutions within the group. Then, say, for example, if we're dealing with an IFA on INN8 who wants something slightly different. And so yeah, like I take Clint's point, but very important that we sort of start to build out those capabilities.
Okay. Yeah, and I think there'll be ongoing engagement on that as we move forward as well. I'll guess in the next couple of months with Clint and Pierre as well. I see the question's been repeated in terms of the fee strip specifically aimed at tied advisors. So we as a platform purely pay over the fee over to Liberty. We don't have a fee strip agreement with them. Once it hits Liberty, it's or entrepreneur business, it's really not an agreement that's within our authority. Okay, we're speaking about the Liberty Bold to elevate to INN8. We know that's not in tranche two. And I'm not going to go out on a limb and say it might be in tranche three, but it is down the road that we'll be looking at elevating Bold.
Yeah, someone's looking for communication drafted for advisors. You'll get to see the
Yes.
versions of comms that go to clients in advance of that actually going out to them. And so that's also important that we prepare advisor in advance of whatever communications are going out. And certainly, if you want to send them comms in advance, you will have the client lists, and we can give you a number of pieces of collateral, whether that's the benefits of INN8. We've got a number of sort of client-specific documents for that, and you can sort of customize depending on what you would like to send to your clients.
Mark, just off of that, I'm thinking, I mean, would we be just distributing that to advisors, or would we host that on sort of CPD portal where they can access it when they need it?
I think whatever works best for advisors, Shane. So I think the
Okay.
first point of call is making it available within the distribution space, and then within their regional execs, and they know sales leaders know where to go, and then
Mm.
advisors have sort of one point of call. So certainly whichever makes sense for the advisor for them to get the collateral.
Okay. Then there's quite a long question there, Michael, and I'm running out of English. So, I mean, I think if you if we can sort of work through that sort of innate system, speaking to the Rate 28 calculator, um, is that something that we're currently working on?
I think I know who the anonymous attendee is, so you could have put your name in. Um, So yes, so there's two issues there. The one is the ability to do a rebalance where you put a destination sort of
Mm.
asset allocation in. We're busy working on that and hopefully have something towards the back end of this year. From a Reg 28 monitoring perspective, I think that's a live feed that goes out to our partner. So um, I'm not sure where that advisor is getting stuck, but maybe we can take it offline and just look at the actual client. So I'm happy to engage offline with advisor if that's possible.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That'd be great. Gateway, will Gateway move across? Obviously, from the hybrid perspective, in terms of evolved advisors use Gateway, and within the tight space, they also use Gateway as a standalone.
Absolutely. So Gateway so from my perspective is a investment platform style product, and we'd certainly like to move it across to the INN8 platform. Those discussions are still underway.
Okay. And Morningstar reporting, we know that's one of the reporting capabilities within the INN8 platform. Will that remain available on the INN8 platform?
So Morningstar is an important one because the tools as they stand, Morningstar are going to stop supporting them at the end of December. And so we've had a number of months to prepare for that change. And so what they're replacing them with is an API style format. And then ourselves, like a client of Morningstar, would be building tools to sort of mirror what they have done previously. And so the team are hard at work, both at the LISP and INN8, to look and see what this looks like. And so we've got a really nice opportunity to refresh our reporting. So it may not contain all the existing Morningstar reports. It might contain additional tools and stuff that we build within the platforms. But certainly, yes, a reporting capability like what you have with Morningstar will be available going forward within the platform environment.
I see we are at 11 o'clock, and I just want to finish off briefly. I know, Leanne, thank you for noting that we will review all these questions and compile a Q&A and distribute that to all the advisors regarding all questions. So thank you for doing so. So apologies if we didn't get to your questions. I just want to close off the session quickly, Mike. What is expected of advisors over the next coming weeks in terms of Tranche 2 Elevate?
Okay, fantastic. So if you haven't been paying attention the whole time, now's the time to listen. So number one is please engage with the platform. Get yourself accredited, onboarded. If you need to go to training or refresher, look out for those. We'll be running a few sessions where you or your office staff can drop in and learn more about the platform, just to make sure you're comfortable with where clients are going to be moving to. Try and process a couple of new business cases or transfers or whatever you need to, so that you can see how the platform works. And I think that's the really the big ask from ourselves. We know it's a change of doing business, but thank you for engaging. And then it's engaging with the FAQ material. And if you have any questions that aren't covered there, please get in touch with us, and we'll make sure that all the support services are there to support you with questions. And then lastly, just looking through your client lists once they're made available and seeing who's in scope so that we can prepare those communications in the lead up to September.
Absolutely. Just a comment on Duncan O'Dear. Will Kevin Lings still be the man? Kevin Lings will always be the man.
100%.
So 100%. Yeah, so Mike, I think it was a great, eventful, sort of packed hour, and we're trying to get a lot of information out there. So I want to thank you for your time, your insights as well, and sharing as much as you possibly could with us. And I know it's ongoing with myself and my team and a broader team as well, which we always appreciate. And to all of the advisors and stakeholders, partners that are on this call this morning, this is a collaborative program. There's a lot of resources available to you. Please, if you have any questions, further information required, need more clarity, reach out to your dedicated SIC, speak to your Liberty Investment BDM, keep communicating with us. We want to provide you with as much tools and resources available to make this transition as smooth as possible for you. So please keep engaging with us. Thanks for your time. Mike, once again, thank you to you as well. I'm sure we'll speak soon, and we look forward to maybe hosting another session. All of the best to all of you. Have a great day. We'll chat soon.
INN8 is a registered trademark of Stanlib Wealth Management Pty Limited, an authorised financial services provider.